One. Welcome to the Whiskey Lifestyles Women in Whiskey series. This is our next episode with Teeling Whiskey. And I'm going to let the young woman to my right, your left, depending on how you're looking at the screen, introduce herself.
Hey, everybody. My name is Mandy. I'm the Teeling brand ambassador here in New York City.
Thank you, Mandy, for being here. I thought you were going to pronounce your last name because I didn't want to butcher it. So,
it's Striph. I'll say that for you. It's Striph.
Okay. Striph. Okay.
Save you the stress of trying to pronounce my last name.
There we go. Okay. So, Mandy, tell us a little bit about how you became a brand ambassador with Teeling.
Well, I worked in bars for about 10 years throughout New York City. I learned a lot about whiskey as well as other kinds of spirits. And after a while, I decided I kind of wanted to get out from behind the bar and start talking to people in a way that you really can't when you're trying to make tips, when you're trying to sell things. So I got involved with Teeling. It was a brand I chased really pretty hard because I think they're doing such cool things, such innovative things, really modernizing a very classic spirit. And that was really the whiskey brand that I really wanted to work for because of all the cool things they're doing.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about Teeling. Has a very, we were talking a little bit earlier, has a very interesting story as well as a very interesting master distiller given the Irish whiskey space. So tell us a little bit more about Teeling and, for those who are not aware of what Teeling is and all the amazing spirits that they create.
So Teeling is an Irish whiskey company. We're based out of Dublin. The Teeling family has been making Irish whiskey since the 1780s. But our founders, Jack and Stephen Teeling, who are brothers, decided they wanted to put the family name on it and really kind of push Irish whiskey into the new century. So in 2012, they started the whiskey company. And in 2015, the distillery opened to the public. We have a lot of really great things happening. We are the most awarded Irish whiskey. Our distillery actually won the most sustainable Irish Distillery Award from Icons of Whiskey this year. We were the first single malt to win Best Single Malt in the World from Ireland. And also just the other day, our first of the Wonders of Wood series, the Chinkapin Oak Single Pot Still, won Best Single Pot Still at World Whiskey Awards. So we're really doing things that are catching the public eye and some notice. Our master distiller, Alex Chasko, cut his teeth making beer in the Pacific Northwest before moving over to the distilling side. And because he did come from that beer background, he really does start all of his whiskey journeys with the really microscopic little yeast that you would start beer with and moves the flavor forward from there. The entire team is really taking the Irish whiskey category and kind of turning it on its head, looking at all of those beautiful traditional things that make Irish whiskey so important in the world of whiskey, and then also finding ways to modernize it and innovate it as well.
And it's interesting. So this is the 10th, and we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of Teeling, in comparison to several other brands that we will not name who have been in it for decades, if not centuries. You touched on a little bit, but what separates Teeling and what has made, in your opinion, what has made Teeling such an amazing, new spirit in this category?
So one of the things I love about Teeling is a third of what we do every year is specifically set aside for innovation, or as we in the scientific community like to call it, fucking around and finding out. So doing those kind of things to just try something and being willing to fail, but then also possibly finding something really cool and new is something that not a lot of whiskey brands are willing to risk. That's a third of your production run that you might not be able to sell, that you might not be able to use. So having that kind of brave idea to just try new things, I think is something really interesting that sets Teeling apart.
Okay. And you said you chased Teeling down, and now I want to hear the story. What was it about Teeling? How did you chase them? Were there restraining orders? Tell us a little bit about your pursuit of the Teeling ambassadorship.
When I saw that the job was coming up, I knew that you're going to get hundreds of applicants for a whiskey job. Everybody wants to work in whiskey. It's the coolest job you could possibly have. So finding ways to set myself apart was kind of the name of the game. No restraining orders were had, but I looked at who was going to be the hiring manager and then quickly went through all of my social media to see where our connections were, how I could get introduced to this person, and kind of unfortunately played the game is one of those things you have to do, and leveraged people that I knew to make sure that I kind of got pulled out of the piles to make sure that I had that face-to-face interview.
Okay. So, and tell us a little bit about you were behind the sticks for a while. Tell us a little bit about your bartending experience and how that led to, or how that influenced, your ambassadorship with Teeling.
So I've been working in cocktail bars for a very long time, and that kind of goes from everywhere from very whiskey centric bars to craft cocktail to fine dining. I've worked from everywhere from Dear Irving to the office at the Aviary. So having all of these different kind of influences, people who are really pushing the envelope, people like the Aviary, like Micah Melton over there, but then also people who are really hospitality focused, people like Union Square Cafe, and having just a wide array of experiences, I think helps make bringing Teeling to the masses a little bit easier. I understand what people who go to this kind of bar are looking for. People who are going to this kind of bar, they have a different need, and finding a way to kind of massage Teeling into all of those spaces.
Okay. And, we are coming out of March. So obviously very big month for Teeling. We're talking all things Irish whiskey, St. Patrick's Day, et cetera. How do you position Teeling out of that very traditional, quote unquote, space of Irish whiskey, St. Patrick's Day, a Guinness and a shot? Tell us about how you tell the Teeling story beyond that and expand people's experience and understanding of what Irish whiskey, and particularly Teeling, can bring to them that is different from a single malt from Scotland or bourbon.
So one of the things that I really love about Teeling is that while, of course, St. Patrick's Day is a focus, it should be a focus for an Irish whiskey, but it's not the overarching focus of the whiskey overall. Teeling Small Batch, our flagship whiskey, is aged in ex-bourbon and ex-Central American rum casks. And those rum casks really come through in a way that makes Small Batch really easy to work with in more tropical cocktails. So more so than some other whiskeys, I think Teeling can be a very summery drink. You can put it in anything that you would put rum in. So you can have that kind of islandy feel with this whiskey in a way you can't with others.
Okay, cool. And, part of the series is called, or we started the series and it's called Women in Whiskey. And, we've gotten a lot of feedback. When I say the phrase women in whiskey, take it as you will. What does that mean, being a woman who is in whiskey? What does that mean to you?
If you had asked me that question about 10 to 12 years ago, I would have a very different answer. 10 to 12 years ago, if I went in somewhere and ordered a whiskey, the comment I usually got was, that's an awfully strong drink for a little lady. And, having all of these women who have kind of come before me being like, yeah, we're not going to play those games. Women are allowed to like whiskey. Anyone is allowed to like whiskey. And so many of these women came before me and really blazed that trail to the point where you say women in whiskey today, it's kind of like, well, yeah, duh, we're here. We've been here. And so now when you're talking about that, for me, women in whiskey is kind of almost a path to getting people who are afraid of being marginalized in whiskey to, just kind of come in the door. You always think about the straight white male, that is who drinks whiskey, but that's not the case. Anybody can drink whiskey. So I think being a woman now is just kind of being a steward for all of those people who aren't straight white men, the LGBTQ community, the people of color, people who come from countries that don't traditionally make whiskey even. So I think now it's just about being an ally for people who might be a little nervous coming in the door.
Okay. And whether that is a straight white male or a person of color or a woman, or any other marginalized group, how do you introduce Teeling to them? What is that, what is the, when you're doing that first, whether it's an introduction or, you're working with consumer activation, how do you introduce Teeling and, convey that message and convey that experience to them?
I've always said that whiskey isn't a one size fits all. So if I'm introducing someone to Teeling in a bar, I'll take note of what they're drinking. Are they drinking a cocktail? Is it a spirit forward cocktail? Is it a shaken cocktail? How do they like to drink? And then I will order them whatever it is that they're drinking with Teeling to just kind of show them that, yes, this fits into your sphere. This fits into where you are. if I'm doing, say, a sampling in a liquor store and somebody is, reaching for a Kentucky bourbon that they've supported for years, maybe it's what their parents drink and now that's also what they drink, seeing what they're picking, going, oh, you like Kentucky bourbon, you like that high corn. Have you tried the single grain? This is a corn whiskey from Ireland. It's aged in Cabernet cask, which is a little bit different. It's going to give you a fruitier feel, something that you would like if it's similar to, X brand that you're pulling off the shelf. So it's about, reading the room in a certain way, seeing these people and be like, okay, you like this. I've got something for that. Oh, you like this. I've got something for that too.
Okay, cool. So tell us a little bit about the Teeling. Teeling does a lot of different finishes beyond their kind of core product. Tell us a little bit about kind of the innovation at Teeling. As you mentioned, they devote a third of that product every year to kind of innovating and doing something different. What's either coming up this year or something that you guys have done recently that you're really, excited about or really proud of?
I'm really excited about the Chinkapin Oak release. It's our first release from our Wonders of Wood series. Chinkapin Oak, I really enjoy because it does grow in the northeastern United States. So being in New York, it's cool to have something that's coming out of Dublin that's aged in wood that basically is from my backyard, which I like having that personal connection to it. It also just won Best Single Pot Still at Icons of Whiskey, I think, last week. So it's a new award for us to be picking up, and having it be for single pot still, which is the only uniquely Irish style of whiskey, is really exciting. And then being able to taste it up against our regular single pot still release, seeing the differences between aging it exclusively in virgin Chinkapin Oak versus other aging. It's wild to see what a barrel contributes to something that has the exact same mash bill.
Absolutely. Cool. And, we always ask our guests, when this is such an industry where, obviously work hard, play hard is one thing, but you can both work hard and play too hard. What does work-life balance look like for you, Mandy? How do you disconnect? How do you, when you're not drinking whiskey, what do you do to balance that out?
Well, I think part of it is, having balance while you're working too, not just a work-life balance. Mm-hmm. So my balance when I am working is, just because you see me with a whiskey in my hand doesn't mean I'm necessarily drinking it. I'm hydrating more than anything else. I'm drinking a lot of water. Mm-hmm. So it's about making sure that you're taking care of yourself while you're working. And then when you're not working, finding the do not disturb feature on my phone was a beautiful thing. Making sure that my phone isn't ringing off the hook was a really great thing. And I'm also I'm a voracious reader. So making sure that I've got 30 minutes at the end of the day to just read a book, disconnect, fall into the world of fiction is very good for the psyche as well.
Okay. So what are you reading right now? Let's give us, or if not right now, what are two picks recently off the Mandy must-have list?
The Mandy must-have list, A Gentleman in Moscow, is my favorite book of all time. If you work in hospitality, if you work in food and beverage, I cannot recommend this book enough. It's essentially about a man who is a political prisoner, sort of, in Russia. And so he gets trapped in a hotel. He has to live in this hotel because if he leaves this hotel, he'll be a political prisoner. So it's all about food and drink and what makes family within hospitality. And it's a really great book. I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah. Also very timely.
Right. Also very timely. Yeah. When I read this, probably in 2017 or 18 before things really got crazy, but it's just because it's set in Russia, larger themes. Themes.
Gotcha. Okay. And then the question we like to ask every guest is our final question. If you could have a drink with anyone, it can be a Teeling, it can be a 2-ounce Teeling pour, it can be a Teeling Irish whiskey, Irish coffee, excuse me. Give me anything. Who would it be and why?
That's a really good question. If we're leaning towards whiskey people, I would probably say Bessie Williamson.
Okay.
Do you know about her at all?
I don't.
I guess I should probably
inform our audience. Yeah.
So Bessie Williamson, I think it was the mid 30s. She was hired as a temp at Lefroy, doing office work or something like that. And she completely fell in love with whiskey. And then many years down the line, she owned the company. She once the original owner passed away, she took over. And then the Scotch Whiskey Society, I think in the 60s, named her the ambassador to the US. Like she went from being, I believe it was like a secretary or something, to running this company to being a voice of whiskey in the greater world before, women in whiskey was even a phrase we were saying. I think she would be a great person to have a whiskey with because she would really understand where the whiskey was coming from and also what it means to be a woman in whiskey.
I mean, I feel like that's if someone hasn't made that a film yet, I feel like that's that's a biopic right there, just
right?
Waiting to be made.
HBO, call me.
There we go. Exactly. we're gonna manifest that. And then okay, so you said in whiskey, so not in whiskey. So if you're gonna take someone who is not in that world, what's the other answer?
It's really selfish, but probably Emma Thompson. She's my favorite actor, and she just seems like a really fun person who doesn't take herself too seriously. And I think that's the kind of person I want to drink whiskey with. Someone doesn't take themselves too seriously, someone who's going to make a joke, enjoy the time with people. I would really enjoy that. And also just listening to a British accent for a while. Key.
as a fellow Anglophile, 100%. Yeah, just any Brit anywhere. A friend of mine once said, "Why do you love London so much? It's just like New York." I was like, yes, with way better accents. And I say that as someone who grew up on the East Coast my entire life. It's just the accents are, it's chef's kiss. So Mandy Striph, thank you so much for doing this and taking the time out. Really appreciate it. I guess lastly, let people know where they can find you, follow you, the brand, etc.
You can find me on Instagram at mstriph, MSTRIPH. You can find Teeling on Drizzly. You can find it at Astor Wine and Spirits. You can find it pretty much anywhere that you find your premium whiskeys. You can also find them at Teeling Whiskey on Instagram as well.
Cool. Thank you so much.
It is my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. All right. Cam, we're good?
Yes, we are good.
Professional of Mandy. Mandy said,